few years ago, I got into surfing, big time. I moved close to this beach and restructured my little signwriting company to free up more time for surf. Surfing is by far the most immersive natural experience that I've ever had, and it's given me a whole new appreciation for nature and for life in general. I started to notice the water at my local surf break tasted a little bit funny after a heavy rain. I found out there was an old landfill up the road that released toxic waste into the stream, which flowed down into the oceans and amongst us and the marine life that we shared them with. At the time, I was producing laser and vinyl cut signs from petroleum-based plastics. For every logo we stuck on a car or building, we would send about 6 times that amount of non-biodegradable waste to landfill. When we were busy, this probably equated to a ton every couple of months. A truck would pick it up and take it away, out of sight and out of mind, or so I thought. I started to look for alternatives, but there weren't any. So I started to reconsider my career choices. A few weeks later, I dented one of my surfboards on some rocks. It wasn't until I went to repair it that I discovered it was made from polyurethane foam and polyester resin. These materials are carcinogenic, toxic, and non-biodegradable, which means they last forever in the landfill and are bad for the people that work with them, and bad for the environment. I also discovered that the majority of surfboards sold in New Zealand were either imported as a finished board or as a blank, which is essentially an oversized surfboard that the local shapers will cut down to the finished dimensions and wrap in fiberglass and resin. An average surfboard weighing only 3 kilograms will emit 300 kilograms of carbon dioxide in its lifetime. This completely contradicted what surfing meant to me, so I thought I'd try and make my own surfboard from wood, using the laser cutter at work. After doing some research, I discovered that the first surfboards were hollow and made entirely from timber, up until around the mid-1950s when polystyrene was invented. This new material was quickly adopted because it was a lot cheaper, lighter, and it was easy to work with. I was curious, I guess, to see if I could use the fancy machines that we had at work to make a traditional style hollow wooden surfboard that would compete on both performance and price with these new engineered materials. I got really close, and then the importer of this Italian plywood that I was using ran out of stock. At the time, I thought this was going to be a huge setback, but it was actually the best thing that could have happened. Over the next couple of months, I met 2 Kiwi blokes who showed me what it truly means to run a sustainable business, and how ignorant that I was to think it simply meant to just make things out of wood. They showed me running a sustainable business was about developing local solutions for local problems, whilst having a holistic perspective of everything that comes in and out of their business, and how all these little transactions affect the people in their local community, the environment, and their bottom line. My first task was to find an alternative supplier of timber. Other board makers around the world were using paulownia. Paulownia is a light, strong wood that is rot-resistant in salt water, which makes it perfect for surfboard construction. This is when I met Graham. Now, Graham runs a dairy farm in the Waikato that's right next to one of the country's best trout fishing rivers. When he realized the effects that his dairy farm were having on the nearby waterways, he planted rows of paulownia trees. 60% of rivers in New Zealand are deemed unswimmable due to livestock runoff. By strategically combining agriculture and forestry, Graham is able to capture and harvest his cow's waste, which is good for the trout, and it's good for the people that eat them. It's good for the rivers and the oceans, but it's also good for Graham because he makes more money now per acre than he ever did farming just cows. The skeleton-like structure that we previously devised had strength issues in the hollow sections, so we would fill these, the impact areas with bits of broken surfboards. This worked, and it kept a few boards away from landfill, but it was quite time-consuming. Then we met this guy, Richard, up at the Porora tip. What a legend. So Richard drives around Wellington picking up polystyrene packaging from fish restaurants and other retailers. He takes it all away, and he mulches it all up into small chips, which he then remolds into the large slabs like this one here of perfectly good polystyrene foam. Essentially, he diverts the majority of Wellington's polystyrene waste away from landfill and sells it to people like me to give it a new life. This material makes the core of our boards. As you can see, it's full of imperfections, but we cover them all with Graham's beautiful timber. This method of board making is known as sandwich construction, and it involves combining low and high density materials together with a layer of fiber in between. The result is an extremely strong and light surfboard that won't ding or break, which means they last a lot longer and require a lot less maintenance. In order to make, or a big part of my job is to tailor the shape and size of these surfboards to the shape, size, and ability of the surfers. But in order to do this in this type of construction, I had to build some pretty fancy machines. So over the last 18 months, I've been working on a reconfigurable mold inside a vacuum press. This machine interprets the curvature of the customer's unique 3D model, and it replicates it across a flexible bottom sheet. We cut all our components flat. Here's one of the cores. As you can see, it hasn't got any curve in it. And then as we glue the components together, we start to introduce the curve. And the final process is to glue the timber on, which goes on top. And once the glue is dry, so that all occurs inside a vacuum press. So the vacuum sucks all the air out, applies an even pressure. Once the glue is dry, the board is essentially set to the shape and ready to be shaped. And the finished product ends up looking a little bit like that. Chuck some wax on it, and she's ready to go. So at the moment, we shape all our own boards, but what we really want to do is work with the talented shapers all around New Zealand so that they can provide their customers with an environmentally friendly alternative to the imported blanks that they're currently using. Producing a surfboard, it's quite a wasteful process, and it's almost impossible to not generate waste in the production of the boards. But that's not to say the waste can't either be repurposed or recycled. We save all our offcuts of polystyrene and put them in this big bag. When it's full, we take it out to Richard, pay him $25, and he recycles it into the next batch of blocks. We save all our thin offcuts of Polonia to make collateral, like our business cards and these gift vouchers. And we're working with Chris, who's a local body surfer, to make these beautiful hand planes from our larger offcuts. We also save all our trimmings of fiberglass to make fins, all in an attempt to better serve the people in our local community, the environment, and our bottom line. I recently decided that we would no longer send these boards overseas, limiting our market to New Zealand. This means reduced fuel consumption, but it also means that we can easily repair any damage they do incur to ensure they never end up in landfill. Instead, we're going to license and sell our technology so that other board makers all around the world can make surfboards for the local surfers from locally recycled or locally grown materials. Our projections suggest that this will be more profitable than exporting boards anyway. We were recently awarded with a gold-level EcoBoard certification from Sustainable Surf. This has been really good marketing, but more importantly, it's our way of, reassuring our customers that their buying decisions are having a positive impact on the planet. And when they paddle out on one of our boards, they know the materials that went into making it aren't polluting the water beneath them. I'm ashamed to admit that I had to taste the implications of my actions before I started to change them. But nature's warning signs can be quite subtle, and it's often easier to turn a blind eye. Thank you.